Alexis AV Talk. Let's talk about workforce development. Alexis AV Rocks. You're invited to the #1 event with Alexis LeBroy.
Hello, everybody. This is Alexis LeBroy with another Alexis AV Talk. Really happy to be here with you. Happy New Year. This is our first episode of 2021. Took a little break last year at the end of the year because, mental health break, obviously, and really glad to be picking back up and getting started again with the new year. I wanted to talk to everybody, and I wanted to bring some folks from the live events industry to the forefront and spotlight some of my friends and colleagues from the live events industry, because I just haven't seen enough of that in the last year. And as you know, the AV professionals in the live events have really taken a beating this year. We're still taking a beating. And I really wanted to highlight some of my friends who are in live events and just talk about their creativity and their innovation and their resilience in what's happened to everybody during this time of COVID. So my first friend that I'm bringing on to talk with all of you is Suleyman Usman. And he is not only a friend, he's a colleague, and he's my former boss from a long time ago. So we've stayed in touch over the years. We've worked at AVI before the SPL, after the SPL, and at PRG, which is formerly VER. So here's Sule. I wanted to make sure everybody knows who he is and have him come on. So Sule, please come on, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much, Alexis. It truly is an honor to be on this. I really appreciate it. I think after 3 decades in the industry, it is to be recognized or to be called onto a podcast or a vlogcast, whatever it's called, and to share what I do know and how I can help. Would be extremely beneficial, not just for me, but hopefully for the folks who are listening as well.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it very much. I wanted to, you said 30 years in the industry. First, talk about how you got to the AV industry. I always like to ask people that because everybody has such a different story. Some people's story have, they've kind of fell into the industry. Some people, it's been by design. So what's your story?
Well, I just knew that within a few months after I'd gotten into the industry that was it. I just knew that I only needed to be in this industry for about 6 months because it would just tide me over and I could move on, go to what I really wanted to do, which was film production. So I stumbled into this because somebody else that I bumped into happened to mention it. I think like most people, nobody really kind of, at least back in the day, maybe it's a little bit more noticeable now, but back in the day, you didn't really know any of this existed, and a lot of us kind of stumbled into it. So I started freelancing, signed up with TAVS here in Atlanta, which was owned by Stephen Goot. And participated as a freelance first, just for maybe about, literally, I think it was only a few weeks, and then was hired on full time, and then into a hotel, by the way. So I came up the hotel path and became a director of a property, and then became a regional director. And from there, it was going to a different AV company. Several AV companies later, I ended up at AVI SPL. And at AVI SPL, I was fortunate enough to get into a position that I really, really liked, which was Vice President Product Development. And product development was great for me because I'm an ideas person, but I can also, handle the operations, sales, marketing, that kind of comes somewhat naturally, but in some way I have to kind of struggle a little bit in some of those areas. But for the most part, the product development side was just a brilliant addition, I think, to my career. And essentially, it brought me to where I am right now, which is with the whole COVID situation, being with VER, and then being with PRG when PRG acquired VER. Come March of 2020, it was evident that the industry was starting to get really impacted, and so we were furloughed. And then from there, we were laid off. And in doing that, I kind of resuscitated an idea that I had been working on for a while. And here we are now, where I provide audience engagement, not just on the consultation side of things, but also on the tools side of things.
Very, very cool. So, we've stayed in touch over this time, and you actually started not one, but two businesses during this time.
Right.
So can you talk just a little bit about the first business, because that's gone now.
Yes.
And then, talk a little bit about how your role in product development led you to that initial business. And, how did you get to your current venture too?
Sure. So it really is kind of tied into the whole product development side of things, because I was with AVISPL. Ultimately, what I was doing was also audience engagement, but it was from a slightly different angle, because I was looking at touchscreens, and I was looking at the possibility of these touchscreens becoming really helpful for the presentation side of things, especially in breakout rooms. So in looking at that, and in being charged by AVISPL to come up with a product and a solution that would help to not only increase revenue, of course, but also provide us with somewhat of a competitive aspect to what we're doing. I focused on the whole engagement side of things and what applications would work with the touch screens. From there, I started to broaden my view on audience engagement, but it was a bit limited with AVISPL, because there was a particular direction, of course, and products and solutions that we were looking at for them as a company. But it did graduate into giving me more of a perspective in that area. And in putting together my first company, what I really looked at was more like a platform, and it was more like an online cloud-based platform where presenters could go and they could very easily connect with content that was audience engagement related, and they could have their participants be able to tap into that platform and be able to receive the audience engagement. So that's
a pivot in and of itself, right? Like going from the actual product hardware to an online platform.
Exactly. Yes. And I specifically wanted online because I felt that was really where the future was. And I felt like I didn't want to get settled with assets. I didn't want hard assets. I didn't want buildings. I wasn't interested in buildings. I wasn't interested in trucks, etc. So it really worked well to look at the online version of this and say what could work with the hardware and the solutions and the expertise that's already out there within the audiovisual field, right? Like, what could I bring to this to help everybody? That was the way that I looked at it. After about a year or so of me working on this, what happened was eventually I realized that I couldn't bring this to market the way that I wanted to bring it to market. And it really does require, when you are working on projects like that and you're trying to bring a startup to market, there's more than one way you could do that, but one of the best ways you can kind of work with a platform and just spill it out there is through investment, right? So it was clear that I didn't have the time from working full time. I didn't have the time to be gallivanting around the country trying to get investment. That slowly went away when I realized that, and I pivoted slightly to what I'm doing now, because I realized that the platform was a tool, and really everything that I was talking about was audience engagement, and I needed to focus on audience engagement, but have the tool there that could be used to facilitate the audience engagement. Okay. So I kind of brought the tool under more control, and what I have now as a tool is not so much an online platform, but I use GIFs that I can create based on the content of the presentation that's taking place. And it's designed to help to further the objectives of the clients, right? So if a client comes in and says, these are my objectives, I speak with them, I consult with them. And part of what I do is I create a complete audience engagement campaign that takes into account the pre-event, the in-event, and then the post-event. Okay. And I use the GIFs and I sprinkle them throughout. And they're all predicated, by the way, they're all kind of built on adult learning principles as well, instructional technology. So I follow all of that. I research all of that in order to further the actual education that's being delivered. So that after the fact, what happens is you get a follow-up based on everything that you went through in the event. So that's how I ended up kind of pivoting and coming to where I am now.
So the name of your new company is?
SUUSconnect. SUUSconnect. Yep. Okay.
SUUSconnect.com.
Yes, Suleyman Usman Connect. Well, SUUSconnect. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I got that, but some other people may not get that. Okay. So what lessons, well, you kind of talked about lessons that you've learned. Who are your customers? Who do you think would be your customers, and what hole do they have? What challenge do they have that SUUSconnect is going to help them fill and offer a solution for?
I think that's a great question, because from a market standpoint, from a customer standpoint, I've actually got more than one, right? So first and foremost, my background and experience is in the audiovisual field, which caters to the events, the live events field. So right there and then, of course, meeting planners, even other AV companies that are looking to distinguish themselves by bringing in an additional offering, that's where I can help. Because if I can go to meeting planners direct and say, hey, I bring this to the table for audience engagement, virtual, hybrid, in person. I can go to AV companies and let them know as well that if you go to a bid situation or RFP situation and you want to bring something different to the table, let them know that you bring audience engagement, right? And if that's the case, bring me in and I'll help you facilitate that bid process. And I will also help to distinguish you with regards to the value that you bring to the table. And then I've got the human resources in corporate. So again, I can take care of them because they're doing a lot of training. So what I do from an audience engagement and a follow-up campaign after the event works very well with HR as well. And ultimately, anything that you can look at that is conference related or learning related works very well with what I bring to the table as far as audience engagement.
I think that's very cool. You know, how many, I mean, we've been on so many different webinars and virtual events recently, and well, just not recently, just the past year, so many. And the difference between the way those events looked in, let's say, April, to the way they look now in January, it's kind of, I won't say it's night and day, but you can see the evolution.
Yes.
So you can see the evolution, and you can see where people have realized, planners, event organizers, production companies, they've realized that audience engagement is it has to be one of the top priorities, one of the top objectives for any of those events, because you can put an event out there, you can get the people and the metrics, but if you don't have the engagement part, it's just something that's on in the background on their second or third monitor.
Yes, that is very true. In fact, on studies that have been conducted by some of the heavyweights on the meeting side of the business, when they question meeting planners, engagement comes up tops all the time, because right now they have no idea how to do that. Because when they engage, well, I'll use the term, when they connect with a platform, with a virtual platform, they have some engagement tools, right? So those engagement tools happen to be things like live polling, Q&A, surveys. There's nothing wrong with that from an engagement standpoint, but they are passive. Those are passive engagement. And if you go to my website, you'll see where I have just a finger basically pushing a button on a keyboard, because that's what that type of engagement does. Is the question may be asked, and there is a certain level of engagement, but if all it requires the recipient, the attendee, to do is to push a button in response to A, B, or C, is that enough? Is that sufficient engagement for your event? So then the question becomes, if it isn't, then how can we get them even more involved? And that's where I come in, because everything that I do goes beyond that finger pushing, but I merge the two. I can absolutely take the information that's being put out and being conducted on a survey, turn it around and help that customer make it into something that is active, that actually gets people to network. I can coordinate all of that. So I think that's where my specialty comes in.
I think that's great. I think that's part of the evolution, because we certainly had polling and Q&A. We had that a long time ago, but we haven't really seen a lot of the evolution from that to something else. So yeah, that's great.
And I have to point out too that even though I came up on the live side of things and I'm pursuing on the live side, this does work for the integration side of things, because even in integration, what they do is they take the equipment, they integrate that equipment in a boardroom or conference room, auditorium. But then at that point, when the company is being asked if they have more to deliver, other than providing a service aspect to it, what else do they have to deliver? So if they're able to say, we can provide engagement capabilities for you, then I can work with that company in order to provide that. And I can even work with the company so that if they wanted more of a hook with that customer, I would help the company set up their online portion for that particular service. And they can monitor that with the client, and they can provide the important things like analytics that the client may need. they don't want to have it on their own website, that's fine. We just put it on the client's website. So there is a benefit there as well. It's literally anywhere at all that information and knowledge is being shared.
I think that's great. It's so funny. I saw this cartoon somewhere on Twitter or somewhere, and it was two little screens, two little graphics. One was a graphic of a teacher talking to like a first grade class, elementary students. And so all of them had their pictures going, but they were all doing weird stuff in each picture. One person was showing, one kid was showing their cat, another person was showing their father's shoe or some craziness. The other graphic to counter that was a class of high school students. Nobody had their video on, and the teachers were kind of just speaking into the void. So they don't know if they're getting through to the students or not. So I don't know if that's how everybody's, you know, primary students are and everybody's, you know, high school students are experiencing, but I just thought it was funny, you know, talking about audience engagement that could also include students and teachers and classroom too.
That's right. That you're absolutely correct. It is. I think it's going to get even more interesting on the hybrid side, right? Because now you're looking at really two different types of environment. You're looking at the digital or virtual environment, and then you're looking at the actual in-person, face-to-face, in real life environment. And the question is, how do you now distribute that audience engagement? So I'm looking forward to that challenge when it presents itself. But for now, going in through virtual, I think is an opportunity for me to offer some help to folks who otherwise wouldn't know what to do.
Very good, very good. So as a business owner, you have, and it's something that you've been thinking about. It's you know, would you say this is something that was born out of COVID, or would you say this is something that you have been kind of rolling around in your head for a while?
This is actually doing it was something that was born out of COVID. Yes, COVID essentially said, look, right now, just if you have anything that you've been thinking about working on, you have no choice, because this is it. This is it. Get out there and do it. So while I had been thinking about it for a while, and honestly, way back in 2000 was when I did my first business, which was called PeakQuest. And what I did then was put together Flash animation, and it was still kind of built on this whole follow-up process, right, to meetings. So I would meet with, I would talk with primarily sales training companies, and then they would literally do what I'm talking about now, which is they would go and they would present, and they would talk about the fact that they provide follow-up, and they would get that account in large part because of that. Then they'd come back to me, and I would work with them, and I'd take the content and I would create these Flash animated follow-up modules. But I also would distribute those. So I was actually collecting the list of the attendees and setting that up in online, and being able to automate the push or the drip delivery of these modules over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks. But in that process, it was purely the follow-up. There was no actual engagement. So what I've done is taken that from, couple of decades ago. Here comes COVID, and everything else that I'd been thinking about and kind of been working on my free time, and it was just the perfect opportunity to get it out there. So yes, it was
Yeah.
COVID. It wasn't COVID inspired. It was COVID necessitated.
Yes, it was go ahead and let's get this done. Let's get this
Yes,
started now
right.
that
Yep.
you can do it now. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I found out that you really do need. There's a lot of talk between trying to do something on the side, right? If you have a full time, as long as it doesn't conflict or compete against what you're actually doing.
Right.
But it was tremendously inspiring and tremendously what's the word? It sort of gave me this opportunity, this open opportunity to go ahead and work on it, because there really was no other choice. So what I'm saying is, while you have a full-time job and you're trying to do the side gig thing, it can be very debilitating because of what you owe your full-time job.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it gives you some freedom when something like this happens. So there's a cloud. What is it? A silver lining.
Lining. Yeah.
Yeah.
This really has been a heck of a time. Nothing I would say can compare to this in our lifetimes previously. So I think it is really important to talk about some silver linings in this, and to give people an idea or some hope that we are going to get through this. It's just a matter of when.
Yes.
I don't think it's if, it's just when. And how long will it take? And, I talked to my parents today. My father just turned 70 a week ago, and he said he's got his date when he can sign up for the vaccine, when he can get the vaccine in Indiana.
Okay.
So that may be, I'm a little nervous, but at least that's somebody that I know who is actually, going down that road, and they're going to be protected. So
yes,
that's a good thing. It's just a matter of when at this point. Yeah.
Yes, there are, to your point about the silver lining, there are opportunities out there. I think I am a believer that COVID has flattened the landscape for in quite a few companies, right? Or rather, in quite a few industries, rather. And ours is one. It has been negative, without a doubt, and it's been very, very tough for a lot of us out there. And I think the mindset, for me, the mindset is more like, the little poem, what is it? The serendipity poem or something about Lord grant me the ability
serenity
to handle things. That's the way I look at life, right? So I can't do much about the whole COVID thing, but what is it that I can do? And how can I turn this into an opportunity as opposed to sitting back and not doing anything? So that's how I started really just paying attention and working very hard and studying where I needed to study, because even if this were to fail, let's say, the point is, what I have learned and what I could bring to a company would be immense, right? A company that's looking for innovation, etc. But I hope my intention is not for it to fail, of course, because I do think that I'm bringing a major deal to folks in our industry. But people need to look. They need to try to look beyond the obvious, because there are some small, little itsy bitsy things out there that are rearing their heads, and you just have to be able to see it, and then to kind of start working with it and grow with it from there. It doesn't mean you're going to be a millionaire or a billionaire from it, but the question is, are you looking for some type of constant income? Are you looking for the ability to be the owner of your own fate, so to speak? And if that's the case, then you should look at these little things that the vast majority of AV companies don't look at, only because they are really focused on what it is they do. And that's fine. That's your core competency. That's fine. But if it's your core competency, you need to step outside of that to pull other people in, or other companies in that maybe are small companies, but they add to what you bring to the table, and therefore they make you look better, and they're a good thing for your customer.
Yeah, definition of value add. I think those are great points, and I think we'll leave it at that unless you have something else that you want to add about SUUSconnect or about what you've been doing.
No, this is all. It's been wonderful. The questions were great, and every time I talk about when I answer a question, for example, it's enlightening to me too, because sometimes you don't realize that you know what you know until somebody asks you the question.
Right.
Or perhaps you don't feel how you feel until somebody asks you the question, and then in spilling it and divulging it, it all comes out that, oh, okay, I guess I knew that, or okay, I guess I felt this way. So I hope that I was able to shed some light on some of this, and if anybody out there wants to reach out, connect with me in some way, to, talk with them, if I can help them through, if I can help to provide some positivity, or maybe discuss ways that these little things that I'm talking about that they can look for and work on, I'm open to that. So thank you.
Great. So share your social media, your website. How can people reach you?
So I am on LinkedIn. Just type in, it's Sule, I think it's Sule_Usman at LinkedIn.com. You can reach me right now. Actually, I'm in a struggle with Google Suites and my web hosting company to fix my email. So I can't give you Sule at SUUSconnect. You can hold on to it because it will be live. So it's Sule, SULEY at SUUSconnect.com. But I am on Twitter as well. I don't know what my Twitter handle is.
I should have asked you to take a look at that before, but
it's okay. It's all right. Look, there are some Suleys out there, right? But I think if you see my picture, I think you'll know that it's Sule on Twitter, Sule on LinkedIn.
Okay, got it. Yeah. We'll make sure to tag you every time so that people will know how to find you. And they can direct message you on Twitter, they can direct message you on LinkedIn until your email is up. So perfect.
Awesome. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I wanted to do this because I have heard some really amazing stories from some of my colleagues. One of my colleagues is teaching right now while waiting for the industry to pick back up, which I think is so honorable, and dealing with, I think he's working with some of the younger kids. So I think that's amazing. Yes. I also heard another of our colleagues has gone, well, a few colleagues have gone to the integration side. And I also heard another one of our colleagues has purchased it's not beef jerky, but it's a jerky store in Atlantic City. So I'll be reaching out to him because I want him to tell everybody about his journey too, because I just think it's so positive and just creative. And who would think that, not who would think, but I think all of us have something inside of us that when the going gets tough, we know how to push forward because we work in live events.
Yes.
We are problem solvers and we are creative and we fix all sorts of nightmares, and the audience never sees, they never know that there was an issue. So we're great at that. We've got years of that. We've got skin in the game. So there isn't any reason why we can't make something happen and have a silver lining in all of this turbulence right now. So yeah. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. And anybody who wants to talk with us, about what they're doing and how they have kind of changed around their life during these several months. I hope you'll reach out to me too. I'm Alexis LeBroy on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. So thank you. We'll see you next time.
Alexis AV Talk. Let's talk about workforce development. Alexis AV Rock. You're invited to the #1 event with Alexis Love.